Imagine trying to build a highly functional interstellar spaceship, right? But you don't even know that space is a vacuum.
Right, just a total blind spot.
Exactly. Just picture the absolute staggering confidence of sitting down at a typewriter in the 1930s, deciding you are going to chart a course to the stars.
With zero actual astrophysics.
Zero. Armed with nothing but, like, a really vivid imagination and a completely fundamental misunderstanding of basic physics.
Just wild to think about.
It really is. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today for you on this deep dive. We are dusting off an incredibly obscure, highly eccentric science fiction novel from the 1930s.
It is a classic.
It's titled Adrift in the Stratosphere, and it was penned by a man named Professor A.M. Lowe.
Who was, frankly, a fascinating guy on his own.
Yeah, he was this very clever, very eccentric English inventor who just decided one day to turn his hand to fiction.
And the result is this spectacular, chaotic, just profoundly revealing piece of fiction.
Oh, absolutely chaotic. But before we get into the weeds of this story, we really need to establish exactly why we are looking at a nearly 100-year-old book today.
Because it does get almost every single scientific fact hilariously wrong.
Right. And we aren't doing this just to point and laugh at it with you. I mean, it is the easiest thing in the world to sit here today, right? With a century of hindsight.
Oh, sure. We have images from the James Webb Telescope now.
Exactly. It's so easy to mock a guy from the 1930s for thinking, you can breathe on a comet.
Yeah, but it's intellectually lazy to just mock it, And honestly, you miss the entire value of the text if you do that.
Totally agree.
I mean, if you approach a drift in the stratosphere looking for a textbook on orbital mechanics, you're going to be deeply disappointed.
Deeply, deeply disappointed.
But if you look at it as an archaeological dig into human psychology, it becomes a complete goldmine.
A psychological goldmine, yeah.
This book is it's an unfiltered window into the 1930s subconscious. It shows us exactly what people were terrified of back then.
And what they desperately hoped for, too.
Exactly. It shows how they attempted to make sense of a universe that was rapidly opening up to them, yet still remained fundamentally terrifying and, well, mysterious.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because reading this book sounds a lot like looking at a child's drawing of a car.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Like, the wheels are on the roof, the steering wheel is made of cheese, but you can still tell exactly what they were trying to do.
Yes, it's the unpolished, messy first draft of the future.
Right. When you strip away the demand for scientific rigor that we have today, what you're left with is just pure, unadulterated human anxiety and ambition.
Raw ambition.
And to truly understand that 1930s mindset with you today, we have to start exactly where Professor Lowe starts his story.
Which is not where you would expect a sci-fi epic to begin.
Not at all. We don't open in a gleaming, sterile laboratory. There are no countdown clocks, no vast mission control centers,
No engineers sweating over slide rules.
Exactly. To understand this journey to the stars, we begin in the most mundane, aggressively terrestrial setting imaginable.
Just the quiet rolling hills of the English countryside.
The English countryside. It's a setting that is deliberately, almost aggressively ordinary.
Very much so. It's so grounding.
So the book opens by introducing us to 3 school-aged boys, Peter, Philip, and Victor.
And they're described quite literally in the text as chums.
Chums, which is just perfect. That single word completely sets the tone. These are plucky, upper-middle-class English schoolboys.
Just out on a leisurely motorbike excursion through rural England.
Right. Nothing is happening. It's pastoral. It's quiet. And then suddenly their motorbike breaks down.
A very classic inciting incident.
So they need shelter. They need a place to tinker with the engine. And they just wander over to a nearby unassuming wooden barn.
Just a completely ordinary agricultural building. Nothing special about it.
Just a regular barn, except sitting inside this barn, nestled right there between the pitchforks and the bales of hay.
As one does.
Right, is a massive, half-finished spaceship called the Aeronauticus.
Built by a local man named Alfred Joseph Slater.
Alfred Joseph Slater, the local eccentric.
Hmm.
So these 3 teenagers wander into a barn. They are staring at an actual interstellar vehicle.
And this is where it gets crazy.
This is the actual inciting incident of the entire novel. One of the boys just accidentally bumps the ascent valve.
He literally just leans on the wrong lever.
He leans on a lever or trips, and swoosh, the spaceship instantly launches into the sky.
Just tearing straight through the roof of the barn.
With the 3 boys trapped inside. And that is how humanity goes to space in this universe.
It is the absolute pinnacle of the early pulp fiction boys' own adventure trope.
It really is.
It's worth pausing to look at exactly who these protagonists are and what they represent for you as the reader. They have absolutely zero astronaut training.
None.
They have no scientific background. They haven't spent years in centrifuges or studying advanced mathematics, right?
Right. They are simply posh kids who happen to be riding a motorbike on a Tuesday.
Exactly.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit, or at least point out the staggering cultural arrogance required to write this setup.
Oh, the arrogance is definitely there.
I mean, wait, so they just stumble into a barn and launch a spaceship by bumping a valve. It's like accidentally hot-wiring a nuclear submarine because you tripped over the control panel.
That is a very apt comparison.
How did audiences buy this? We are expected to believe that 3 schoolboys can do this, and the reader is supposed to just nod and say, ah, yes, a completely logical sequence of events.
Right, just another day in the empire.
Exactly. Isn't that just a massive symptom of British imperial confidence? The idea that a well-bred English boy can conquer the cosmos purely by accident.
Armed with nothing but good posture and pluck.
Yeah, exactly.
What's fascinating here is that imperial confidence is undeniably part of the cultural DNA of the time. But there is something even deeper at play regarding how the 1930s public viewed science itself.
Oh, really? How so?
It reflects a very specific pre-institutional view of scientific advancement.
Yeah.
Think about how we view space travel today.
It's huge. NASA, ES, massive budget.
Exactly. It is inherently institutional. It requires massive government infrastructure, international coalitions, billions of dollars.
Decades of meticulous planning by sprawling bureaucracies. You don't accidentally launch a SpaceX rocket because you backed your car into the wrong shed.
Right, you definitely don't. But in the 1930s, the public perception of the breakthrough was fiercely individualized.
So, like the lone genius trope.
Yes, science was seen as the domain of the lone genius. It wasn't governments building the future. It was one brilliant, possibly unhinged guy in his backyard.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
And what makes this particularly interesting is how closely it mirrors the author. Professor A.M. Lowe was entirely that guy.
Really? He was an inventor, right?
He was. He was a brilliant inventor, but he was famously eccentric. He held dozens of patents. He tinkered incessantly.
And he probably operated out of sheds.
He literally operated out of his own workshops and sheds.
Yeah.
So by framing the invention of the spaceship this way, Lowe is making science an accessible, solitary form of magic.
He's democratizing the extraordinary.
He really is. If a single man can build a rocket in a barn alongside the farm equipment, then the threshold for engaging with the miraculous is incredibly low.
Wow, yeah.
The contrast between the mundane English countryside and the fantastic machine hidden behind a wooden door is a powerful thematic statement.
It tells you that the universe isn't locked away in some government vault.
Right. The extraordinary is lurking just out of sight, down the lane, waiting for you to stumble upon it.
It makes the world feel incredibly small, but simultaneously humming with infinite possibility. You don't need a PhD to touch the stars, you just need to accidentally walk into the right barn.
It's a very comforting thought, in a way.
And of course, while launching a spaceship by accident might be remarkably easy in Professor Lowe's universe, surviving the first 5 minutes of the trip is another matter entirely.
Oh, the survival part is where it gets really messy.
Because the moment that ship breaches the atmosphere, these boys crash headfirst into the physical realities of space.
Or, well, more accurately, they crash into Professor Lowe's highly imaginative, fundamentally flawed understanding of space.
Yes, the transition from the pastoral English countryside to the lethal reality of the cosmos is abrupt. And it highlights this fascinating paradox of early science fiction.
For friction between bold imagination and gaping scientific blind spots.
Exactly, because the danger is immediate. The ship launches, the barn roof shatters, they're propelled into the sky, and instantly they realize they have a very fundamental problem.
They can't breathe.
They can't breathe. They're suffocating. There's a frantic, panic scramble as these 3 kids desperately try to figure out the ship's rudimentary life support systems.
So they do realize they need air.
Yeah. So on one hand, you have to give Professor Lowe credit for recognizing that, yes, if you go up high enough, the air gets thin.
A basic grasp of altitude, at least.
Right. But as they're exploring the ship and trying to figure out how to survive this accidental kidnapping by a piece of farm machinery,
Which is a hilarious way to phrase it.
they stumble upon the ship's larder, and it is fully stocked with these super vitamin tablets.
Ah, yes, the super vitamins. This brings us to a really crucial aspect of 1930s sci-fi, which we can call science as magic.
Okay, yeah.
Let's look closely at the cosmology Professor Lowe builds here. His grasp of physics is, to put it politely, deeply out of step, even with the scientific consensus of his own time.
Yeah, he missed some big memos.
He really did. Most notably, he genuinely did not seem to understand that space is a vacuum.
Which is just a staggering detail to miss when your entire novel is predicated on interstellar travel.
It is a profound oversight. He operates on this concept of an elastic stratosphere.
Right, the title itself, A Grift in the Stratosphere.
Yes. In reality, the stratosphere is just one specific, relatively thin layer of Earth's atmosphere. But Lowe uses the term stratosphere as an umbrella phrase to describe the entirety of the cosmos.
A whole thing.
The whole thing. The space between the Earth, the Moon, Mars, it's all just one giant continuous stratosphere.
Here's where it gets really interesting for you as a reader. It's as if you lived your whole life by a small pond, right?
Okay, yeah.
And when someone asked you to describe the Pacific Ocean, you just assumed it was a really, really wide pond.
Just with lily pads scattered a few million miles apart?
Exactly. He took the only part of the sky he vaguely understood and just stretched it across the entire solar system.
Because he doesn't understand the vacuum, the ship flies through a belt of X-rays, as if it's a localized thunderstorm you can just steer around.
Just take a lift at the X-rays, guys.
Pretty much. And at one point, they literally encounter a cloud-like stratospheric creature just drifting out there in the ether.
Just a space cloud monster. It's a beautifully naive, almost romantic cosmology.
It harkens back to the old 19th century ideas of the luminiferous ether.
Oh, right, the ether.
Yeah, the idea that space has to be filled with something for light and heat to travel through.
It can't just be nothing.
Exactly. And the spacecraft itself, the Aeronauticus, really reflects this. It's not a rocket relying on Newtonian physics and thrust in a vacuum.
What is it then?
It's described as this unscientific hybrid part balloon, part rocket.
A balloon.
A balloon. It's designed to float through this thick, soup-like cosmic atmosphere.
But here's the thing. Amidst all the balloon rockets, the breathable space soup, and the floating ether monsters, Lowe completely nails one thing.
The food.
Yes, he nails the logistics of deep space nutrition, the super vitamin tablets they find in the larder. He completely anticipated the modern MRE.
The concept of highly concentrated space food.
Yes, he did. And it shows the specific type of genius and inventor like Lowe possessed.
He might not have understood orbital mechanics, but he deeply understood logistics and efficiency.
Which makes sense for an inventor in a shed.
Exactly. He realized that a lone inventor building a ship in a barn couldn't possibly pack a full kitchen.
You can't fit bulky sacks of flour or massive water barrels into a chassis designed to fly.
Right, so he correctly deduced that human nutrition would have to be distilled down to its absolute most compact, efficient form.
But how do we square that circle? I mean, how do you have a mind that completely misses the basic reality that space is empty, but brilliantly predicts the exact dietary requirements of the Apollo missions 30 years early?
It is a strange contradiction. But you reconcile it by understanding what technology actually does in a story like this.
What do you mean?
Well, in modern hard science fiction, the technology is the setting, right? It operates by strict rules that govern the plot.
Like in The Martian or something.
Exactly. But in 1930s pulp, the technology is a pure narrative mechanism. It's a literal deus ex machina.
Ah.
Okay.
Professor Lowe isn't writing a manual on propulsion. The technology exists exclusively to generate a sense of wonder and to provide instantaneous, miraculous solutions to the immediate narrative roadblocks the heroes face.
So the ship flies because the plot requires them to leave Earth.
Yes, and the vitamin tablets exist because the boys need to eat, and stopping for a proper lunch just slows down the pacing.
And the stratosphere is full of air and creatures because an empty vacuum is boring to write about.
Precisely.
So science isn't a set of immutable laws, it's just the author's toolbox to keep the roller coaster moving.
And that roller coaster doesn't stop for long. Because once the boys manage to navigate this wildly inaccurate air-filled stratosphere,
They run into something worse.
much worse, they are confronted by something far more dangerous than bad physics. They run into the ultimate, unavoidable staple of 1930s science fiction.
Aggressively hostile neighbors.
The Martians.
You literally cannot write a space adventure in this era without running into Martians. It's practically a legal requirement of the genre.
It really was.
So the boys encounter an alien civilization, and it is a brutal, chaotic confrontation. But These aren't the highly evolved, deeply philosophical, hyperlogical aliens you might see in later mid-century sci-fi.
No, you're not getting Arthur C. Clarke or Isaac Asimov here.
Not at all. These Martians are described as a pompous, deeply hostile, imperialistic civilization.
And the arsenal they unleash on these three teenagers is just a bizarre mix of pulp cliché and deeply unsettling psychological warfare.
The transition in the narrative here is jarring for you as a reader, moving from a story of exploration into a story of raw, chaotic survival.
It goes from 0 to 100 very fast.
Yeah, they have death rays, obviously. You have to have a death ray.
That's standard issue.
But it's the other weapons that really caught my attention. The Martians attack the boys with something called the gabble.
The gabble. It sounds silly, but it's terrifying.
It is. It's described as a weaponized sound, an overwhelming, chaotic barrage of noise specifically calibrated to drive the boys completely mad.
And if that doesn't work, they use the imagery of evil.
Which is a weapon that projects horrifying traumatic visions directly into the boys' minds, just to break their psychological resolve.
This entire sequence is the textbook definition of episodic chaos.
It really feels like it.
If you look at the pacing, the author is clearly inventing the narrative, momentum, sentence by sentence.
He's making it up as he goes along.
Absolutely. It's the hallmark of serialized magazine fiction. There is no grand, cohesive narrative arc being slowly uncovered. It's just an exhausting chain of emergencies.
Right. 1 minute you're fine, the next there's a death ray. You dodge that. Suddenly the room is filling with madness-inducing noise.
You cover your ears from the gabble.
And then horrifying visions are melting your brain.
Exactly. But we have to look past the chaotic pacing and ask why Professor Lowe chose these specific types of weapons.
Why not just more lasers?
Why not space torpedoes? To understand this, you have to look at the massive, looming shadow hanging over the entire decade of the 1930s.
Right, because this book wasn't written in a vacuum. Pun absolutely intended.
Very nice. But seriously, these Martians and their specific brand of warfare are a direct, undeniable reflection of the era's deepest fears.
The geopolitical situation.
Yes. Europe in the 1930s was an incredibly fragile, tense place. You have the rising tide of fascism on the continent, the rapid rearmament of empires.
And this creeping, paralyzing dread that another global conflict wasn't just possible, but inevitable.
Exactly. The pompous, aggressive, rigidly hierarchical Martians are transparent stand-ins for the very real human empires that were posturing and marching back on Earth.
So the fear of the alien is really just the fear of the foreign power across the border.
It always is in this era.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I want to dig into the gabble and the imagery of evil specifically.
They are very unique weapons for a space opera.
Because when you read the descriptions of these weapons, it doesn't sound like futuristic, clean, high-tech warfare. It sounds visceral.
It sounds like sensory overload.
It sounds like an artillery bombardment. When I was thinking about a weapon designed entirely around deafening, maddening sound, and another designed to force you to witness horrific visions.
Where did your mind go?
My mind immediately went to the trenches of World War I. Is it possible that this entire sequence is essentially a manifestation of shell shock?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the psychological devastation of the Great War had to have been the defining trauma of that generation.
What's fascinating here is that is the crucial key to unlocking this entire section of the book.
It's all about the trauma.
It is deeply rooted in post-war trauma. If we connect this to the bigger picture, early science fiction frequently operated as a cultural coping mechanism.
Just a way to process what happened.
Yes. It provided a safe, distanced framework for a society to process immense collective trauma. You have to remember, for a British author writing in the 30s, the horrors of the Somme, of Passchendaele, of Ypres.
They were not ancient history.
They were yesterday. A massive portion of the adult male population was walking around with profound, undiagnosed PTSD.
And you can't just write a fun, plucky adventure story about the trenches.
No, it's too real, it's too raw, it's too devastating.
It would alienate the audience.
Exactly. You can't write about an artillery barrage that lasts for 6 days and turns men's minds to mush. But you can write about an alien gabble from a Martian ship that drives you mad with noise.
Wow, yeah. You can't write about the haunting, inescapable memories of seeing your friends blown apart in the mud.
But you can write about an alien weapon called the imagery of evil that forces horrifying visions into your brain.
That is so dark. So the author is taking the very real, mechanized horrors of modern human warfare. The deafening noise, the psychological breaking of men.
And he's projecting them outward onto these pompous aliens.
It safely contains the terror of the Great War within a Pulp Fiction wrapper.
It is a profound displacement of anxiety.
It really fundamentally changes how you read the story. It turns what looks like a goofy Flash Gordon-style romp into a really dark, almost tragic reflection of a deeply scarred society.
It does.
These kids aren't just dodging silly lasers, they're being subjected to weaponized trauma, echoes of the artillery shells that traumatized their fathers.
But what makes this novel such a perfect distillation of the 1930s is that it doesn't just dwell on the fear of war.
Right, there are other fears.
Because after the boys manage to survive this relentless psychological bombardment, they flee deeper into the stratosphere.
They need a break.
And they eventually stumble upon a refuge. But this refuge doesn't offer a vision of a shiny, technologically advanced future.
It reveals the exact opposite.
It reveals a completely different, equally powerful anxiety of the era. The profound fear of industrial progress itself.
Oh, this might be my favorite, most delightfully unhinged part of the entire book.
It is quite something.
The narrative gives us total emotional whiplash. We go straight from the deafening terror of Martian psychological warfare to a literal utopia.
The very specific kind of utopia.
Yes. The boys, fleeing for their lives, discover what the text beautifully refers to as stratosphere islands.
Which, side note, is an incredibly poetic way to describe the cosmos.
It really is. They are later informed by these giant, benevolent, hooded beings called the Archons that these islands are actually what we would call comets.
The Archons. They act as the classic expository tour guides of the era's sci-fi, explaining the hidden mechanics of the universe to our baffled protagonists.
Right, so the boys land the Aeronauticus on the first of these comet islands. Now, if you know anything about comets...
Which we do today.
Yes, you know they are essentially massive, dirty snowballs hurtling through the freezing void of space.
Not exactly a great vacation spot.
But not in Professor Lowe's universe. The boys open the hatch, and they do not find a barren rock of ice and dust.
No, they step out onto a lush, verdant, completely Earth-like world.
In fact, it doesn't just look like Earth, it specifically resembles the idyllic, rolling English countryside.
Complete with meadows and pleasant weather.
It gets better. This comet is populated by humans.
Hyper-intelligent humans.
Hyper-intelligent humans who have achieved an advanced state of civilization. But their version of an advanced civilization is not a sprawling metropolis of glass and steel.
No flying cars or giant skyscrapers here.
No. They have made a conscious, deliberate choice to utterly reject complex technology in favor of a simple pastoral life.
And in the absolute crowning detail of the novel,
these hyper-intelligent, anti-technology aliens are absolutely obsessed with listening to BBC radio broadcasts.
Using, naturally, a wildly improbable radio translator to pick up the signal across millions of miles of deep space.
Okay, I have to stop here because we have to unpack the sheer absurdity of this for the listener.
It's a lot to take in.
Let's look at the arc of this journey. You build a spaceship. You launch into the infinite, terrifying void.
You nearly suffocate.
You do battle with imperialistic Martians who try to melt your brain with noise. You risk everything to explore the farthest reaches of the unknown universe.
It's a truly epic journey.
And when you finally find the absolute pinnacle of hyper-intelligent alien life, what is it? It's a bunch of English people sitting in a meadow, aggressively doing nothing, listening to the BBC.
It is hilarious.
Isn't this just the ultimate anticlimax? It feels like embarking on a treacherous multi-year expedition across the Amazon rainforest, braving disease and predators.
And then you hack through the final layer of jungle.
And you find a fully operational British pub serving warm beer.
Exactly.
It's almost colonial in its lack of imagination.
It is intensely parochial, and I love your analogy of the pub in the jungle, because that perfectly captures the instinct at play here.
It's just so insular.
But to understand why this was written, and more importantly, why it appealed to readers, this raises an important question. We have to look at two powerful literary tropes of the era.
Okay, what are they?
The Wonder Jar, the coming-of-age journey, and the lost civilization. The Comet Island represents a highly specific utopian ideal that permeated early 20th century literature.
So it wasn't just a lack of imagination.
Not at all. You might think it lacks imagination, but I'd argue it reveals exactly what the 1930s imagination was desperate for.
Which was a quiet Tuesday afternoon in Sussex.
Yes. Think about the historical context we just established. You have a society that has just been brutally traumatized by the mechanized, industrialized slaughter of World War I.
Right, the tanks, the machine guns.
Chemical weapons technology had just proven that it could turn the world into a literal slaughterhouse.
It wasn't seen as a savior anymore.
Exactly. And on top of that, you have the rapid, suffocating industrialization of daily life. Cities are getting darker, smokier, louder.
The assembly line is reducing human beings to cogs in a machine.
So the idea of a gleaming, highly mechanized, high-tech city in space wouldn't be a dream to them.
It would be a throw.
It would be a nightmare. It would just be more of the same, but inescapable.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
For a reader in the 1930s, the ultimate sign of advanced intelligence wouldn't be building a bigger factory. It would be having the wisdom to look at a factory and say, no thank you, we're going to plant a garden instead.
True paradise. True enlightenment meant escaping the grinding, deafening gears of modern machinery and returning to a romanticized, peaceful past.
It's a profound rejection of the modern world.
It's the pastoral myth, the belief that innocence and wisdom are tied to the soil, not the machine.
Exactly. And then there is the brilliant, hilarious detail of the BBC radio broadcasts.
Oh man, the BBC.
To a modern reader, it seems like a goofy product placement. But in the 1930s, the BBC wasn't just a media company.
Under Lord Reith, the BBC had a very specific cultural mandate, didn't it?
Yes, it represented order, civilization, education, and calm. Radio itself was still somewhat magical.
The idea that invisible waves could carry a reassuring, cultured voice into your living room on a dark, stormy night was profound.
So out there in the cold, terrifying void of space, surrounded by mad Martians and deadly radiation.
The comforting, posh voice of a BBC announcer is the ultimate tether to sanity.
It's the sound of home. It's the ultimate comfort food for the 1930s British soul.
It brings order to the cosmic chaos. This single sequence really encapsulates the two polar extremes of the interwar mindset, doesn't it?
It really does. On one side, you have the Martians.
The terror of aggressive foreign powers and the trauma of mechanized warfare.
And on the other side, you have the Archons on their comet.
The desperate, utopian fantasy of retreating from the modern world entirely and finding peace in a quiet meadow.
The boys are literally bouncing between the era's deepest trauma and its deepest fantasy.
And having experienced both the absolute worst the universe has to offer and the absolute best, which, again, is apparently just sitting in a field listening to the radio,
There really isn't much left for our plucky heroes to do.
the narrative has nowhere left to escalate. Which brings us to the final act of the book.
And act might be a generous word for what actually happens here.
Because they just pack up the Aeronauticus and they go home.
The conclusion of Adrift in the Stratosphere is notorious for being incredibly abrupt, even by the standards of pulp fiction.
With a shocking degree of ease, considering how difficult everything else has been, the boys just pilot the ship back down to Earth, and then
Just stocks.
the story is over. There is no grand debriefing with the British government. There are no global press conferences where they reveal the existence of Martians.
No quiet philosophical moments where the boys reflect on how small Earth looks from the cosmos.
They just land the ship, presumably dust off their trousers, and the book ends.
This perfunctory ending is actually highly revealing about the nature of the genre at this specific point in history.
What does it tell us?
It tells us that the focus of the text is entirely, 100%, on the momentum of the journey itself. It has zero interest in the consequences of that journey.
Or in character arc or growth.
Exactly. Peter, Philip, and Victor are exactly the same posh, unflappable schoolboys on the final page as they were on the first page when they walked into the barn.
They haven't learned a deeper truth about themselves.
Nah.
It's the narrative equivalent of waking up from a fever dream, shaking your head, and just going downstairs to eat breakfast.
You went to space, you fought a war, you met enlightened comet people, and now it's time for tea.
It is pure disposable escapism. It lacks profound themes or memorable characters in the traditional literary sense.
But that undisciplined episodic chaos is precisely where its charm lies and why it's important to study.
When we look at its legacy, we really have to recognize it as an evolutionary fossil, right?
It captures the science fiction genre in its unformed, wonderfully naive adolescence, long before it became obsessed with hard science, rigorous world-building, and profound sociological critiques.
It's the era before the rules were written. You can't have the polished, breathtaking, scientifically rigorous science fiction that we enjoy today.
The works of Arthur C. Clarke, the expanse of modern space operas.
The terrifying realism of modern sci-fi cinema. You can't have any of that without these wildly inaccurate, highly enthusiastic early swings at the genre.
Professor Lowe pushed the boundaries of imagination outward.
He gave his readers permission to look up at the night sky and imagine a universe filled with adventure, even if he tripped over every single law of physics while doing it.
Exactly. Knowledge isn't just about cataloging facts.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the progression of ideas. By reading this, we understand how our ancestors dreamed.
So let's take a breath and look back at this incredible, chaotic, scientifically baffling journey we've just been on with you.
It's been quite the ride.
We started in the mud of the English countryside, with 3 ordinary teenagers wandering into a barn and accidentally hot-wiring a homemade spaceship.
We launched into an elastic stratosphere filled with breathable air, floating monsters, and supervitamin tablets.
We endured the psychological warfare of imperialistic Martians, dodging weaponized sound that echoed the trauma of the Great War trenches.
We found refuge on a comet that looked exactly like Sussex, where hyper-intelligent beings taught us that the greatest technological advancement is a meadow and a radio tuned to the BBC.
And finally, we crashed back down to Earth, shrugged the whole thing off, and went home for supper.
A truly complete, exhausting, and brilliant tour of the 1930s subconscious.
It really is. And that leaves us with a final lingering thought for you. I want you to mull this over today.
It's a good one.
Professor A.M. Lowe was a clever, educated man writing in the 1930s. He sat down and wrote what he genuinely believed was an incredible, awe-inspiring vision of the future.
But as we've seen, every single page of that vision was shaped entirely by the blind spots, the geopolitical terrors, and the desperate cultural fantasies of his specific, incredibly tense era.
He couldn't escape his present to write the future.
No one can.
So what about us? Look at the highly acclaimed, heavily researched, scientifically accurate science fiction being produced right now, today.
The stories about artificial intelligence, about climate collapse, about biotech and deep space colonization.
When readers in the year 2126 look back at our masterpieces, what are they going to laugh at?
What are our supervitamin tablets and our elastic stratospheres?
More importantly, what invisible, unacknowledged anxieties are shaping our visions of the future right now without us even realizing it? What trauma are we hiding inside our own stories of the stars?
It's a deeply humbling question, and one we probably won't know the answer to until it's much too late.
That's the beauty of looking backward. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive today, because sometimes the absolute best way to understand the unseen forces shaping our future is to look closely at exactly how the past imagined it.